I will say that, Military Visit Day traditionally has been, we've had a focus on the US military, but in recent years, our veterans have come to us and said, we'd really like to be inclusive of other military veterans from around the world. There are veterans who have served their countries. And so we really encourage them to join the conversation as well. So if you happen to be a veteran from a military outside of the United States, we're happy to have you, and you're welcome in this space. Welcome in the club as well. And I'm sure that our veteran community will echo that sentiment. Before we jump into our panel, I don't know if Mary Ellen is here yet. I will read her introduction.
Oh, geez.
Okay.
Yep, she is absolutely here. Do we have to read my introduction? Shorten it up, Quentin.
100%.
Just the high notes.
Absolutely, just the high notes. So Mary Ellen Riley, in her role as Deputy Vice Dean, Mary Ellen leads the student experience outside the classroom, including career management, admissions, and financial aid in student life, in identifying and providing services and support to enhance the student experience from admission to graduation and beyond. She began her career at Wharton as the career advisor in the MBA Career Management Office, supporting students interested in investment banking. After a few years as an advisor, Mary Ellen became the director of MBA Career Management. Building on her experience from the corporate world, Mary Ellen has served as a leader in the maintenance and growth of relationships with alumni, employers, and students across industries and geographies for Wharton. Her passions at Wharton include supporting the Veterans Club, Wharton Women in Business, and all of the various activities that allow students to get out their comfort zone and really challenge themselves. So with no further ado, Mary Ellen Riley.
Thank you, Quentin. Thanks and welcome, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us this afternoon. As Quentin said in that very glowing, I need to update that. I get so cringy when people read my my bio like that, but it is one of my favorite projects at Wharton is working with the Veterans Club. I started doing this close to 15 years ago when there were lots of veterans who wanted to work in investment banking, and I was at a family party up outside of New York City, and all these, my cousin is a banker, he was at Citibank at the time, but there were all these, he's a Wharton alum as well, a lot of Wharton people coming up to me and saying, I met, Joe Schmo, and he said he wanted to be a banker, and he talked to me about joining Merrill Lynch, or joining this, and he talked to 6 different banks and told them all they were his top choice. And what this military veteran was saying to the banks and saying to me was, I'm not sure I have the skills to get hired somewhere. I need to say to everybody, they're my top choice. And so I started out just working with the vets who wanted to work in banking and trying to help them realize that what you bring to to an employer or what you bring to a business school is super valuable to us. An investment bank can teach you how to do finance. A real estate company can teach you how to price an asset. A healthcare company can teach you about whatever their slice of healthcare is. But they can't teach you some of the stuff that you've learned in the military. They can't teach you how to lead and follow at the same time. They can't really teach you how to make decisions with limited information in a ever-changing environment. Some of that stuff that you have baked into you as a result of your experiences, those companies are really looking for. And what I found when I first started working with veterans was, the first thing that I had to teach people how to do was kind of overcome their aversion to using the personal pronoun I. So much of what you guys are used to doing is we, my guys and I, we did this thing, and so what you're going to find as you go through this admissions process, and some of you I know are already round 1 applicants, but you're going to find that the Veterans Club is going to be here to work with you to help you get your applications ready, to help you translate your resume from military speak that civilians don't understand into civilian language, and to help you start working on some of that storytelling that you can do about what you've done as an individual, but also as part of a team. I'm here actually to introduce the Wharton Vets Club, who are going to talk to you a little bit. But what I two things that I wanted to say, two messages I want to deliver. One is you're going to learn a lot of things over the next couple hours through this presentation that apply to all business schools. You're going to be able to take a lot of what we talk about and apply it to any school that that you're applying to. I'm super biased that I think Wharton's the best school for veterans. I think it is. Our veteran community, what we really look for is excellence across all sorts of dimensions. So one of the things that you're probably all used to, right, is that there's this idea within certain branches of the military that you have to be special forces, say that's the best of the best. And my thing is that may be true of, certain, and no offense meant to anybody on this call who's special forces, but we're looking for the best infantry, the best enlisted guy. We're looking for the best. I love some of the EOD techs. They come in with a different kind of risk profile than other folks do. We're looking for, there you go, Neil, looking for the best, of the pilots. We're looking for the best at whatever you're doing. We're looking for excellence. And what we really want to see in the veteran community is lots of diversity, because one of the things that a lot of you are going to be doing is transitioning away from the military and into civilian life. And if you can do that with other people who might not look like you, might not have had the same experiences as you, but are going through that same transition, it's just, I don't know, I just think it's a lot more interesting. And the community that we build, both domestic and international veterans, is incredibly supportive. And I say to the club leaders every year, you have two goals as Vets Club leadership. First goal is everybody needs to graduate, which means everybody needs to get across the academic finish line, easier for some than others. But the club is there to kind of help you navigate that and get you across that finish line. And then the second thing is everybody needs to get a job. And so we spend a lot of time working with the career advisors in career management, bringing lots of speakers to campus to help you really try to translate your experience in your prior life to your experience in the civilian job market. Now, beyond that, the Veterans Club prides themselves on some of the best Army Navy tailgaters I've ever seen, pride themselves on we've got Veterans Week coming up, which will be the week leading into Veterans Day, where we're bringing a number of speakers to campus. There'll be lots of time for civilian students to get to know their veteran classmates. And one of the things that I think is so important about that week is that they get to see you as, not only as classmates, but as sort of an example of the kind of person they might recruit who didn't go to Wharton, right? Guys that you served with who leave the military, who aren't going to go to business school. I want your classmates who are out hiring amazing people to hire some of the guys that you served with that maybe didn't go to, guys and girls, apologies, Emily, that didn't get that experience of meeting you in business school, but can do just as great work. So that's some of the things that the club is charged with. My goals for the club are super simple: graduate and get a job. But the club leadership also puts a big social component on it, which is really fun. For those of you who have families, the club is also really good at helping you figure out schools and housing. And there's a lot of babysitting, swapping, and stuff that goes on because lots of you folks will come with your families, and we want to make sure that that's supported as well. I think one of the questions that I've often gotten is, and looking at some of you who are sitting in uniform makes me think of this. If you run into issues with getting through the application process, I'm going to be deployed when interviews are done. We're really happy to work with you on that. And if you were considering coming sponsored by one of the branches of the military, we've also got a lot of experience with that. So we're happy to help you navigate how to get it paid for and how to get in while you're maybe not local. I am going to say, I don't know if any of the guys are on yet for doing the student panel, but I'm wondering if anybody has a question. I know it's early in this whole thing, so you probably do have questions, but is there anything you guys would want to ask me more about the student experience piece, I think, than I would say about the admission process itself? Does anybody have any questions? Or I could cold call too if somebody wants, I could cold call and somebody make you ask me a question, but anybody? The other thing I will say too is lean on the Vets Club. They've got a whole organizational structure set up to help you with your applications and with getting stuff done. So make sure you lean on those guys. You know what, would you guys mind just jumping in the chat? Tell me where you are geographically, just so we can get a sense of who's where and maybe break the ice a little bit. Sure, if your math is rusty, that can be an issue for the standardized test. One of the things that we've learned over the years is the quantitative side of the GMAT isn't as predictive of success as your verbal side is. So while your math may be rusty, there are a couple of things you could do online to kind of refresh. We've got a Coursera course called Math for Business, if you wanted to take a look at that. To see, look at you guys coming in from all over. Joe Gursky, look at you. I want to go back to, who asked that question? Jeffrey Greenbaum. Yeah, if your math is rusty, it can be an issue with your standardized testing, but I would say if you need to brush up on it, brush up a little bit, but we actually find that your verbal score is a lot more predictive of your success in the program. You know, it still has to be decent, your math score, but, and the other thing that I say, and I say this with love in my heart, is that lots of times you guys bring different gifts to the program. You know, we're not everyone's a submariner. And so we want to see, we look for lots of diversity in the class. And so you'll see that there are lots of different backgrounds. And to that end, lots of different applications. There's not one score that we're looking for, and there's not one type of experience we're looking for. All right, so you guys are literally all over the place. Singapore, Greece, Hinesville, Georgia, Fort Bragg, Media, PA. We should be in person, Media, PA, Samora.
Mary Ellen, I'm sorry to interrupt. We do have the 4 panelists pinned and ready to go for your first questions if you want to kick it off.
Sure. Hang on, I don't see them on the screen. Who's leading that, Casey? Who's in the lead for that one?
No problem. So we have Drew, John, Lee, and Emily. Can everyone see them pinned? I see them pinned on my end, but I don't know if everyone else can see that. Can people give a thumbs up overall if you can see everyone pinned? No? Okay, that's not good. I don't know how that's happening. I will continue. Let me remove pins and then we'll get started. But Mary Ellen, would you love to ask the first question of everyone? I apologize about that. I thought everyone could see the pin.
Sure. No worries. So the first question I love to ask Wharton students is, what surprised you the most about Wharton when you got here? And I'll start with Drew. Why don't you answer that one first? Way to put you on the spot, but.
All good. I'm used to the
cold. And can you introduce yourself too? Like what year you are, where you came from, what you're doing now, and then what surprised you the most? How about that?
Absolutely. Drew Luongo. I am a P8 NFO in the Navy. I'm here on a sponsored program by the Navy, so I'll go back to either Jacksonville, Florida, or Whidbey Island, Washington after here, and I'm a first year. The thing that surprised me the most, and Mary Ellen kind of touched on part of it, is how helpful people are, Vets Club specifically, but even the students outside. If you ever have a question about any aspect, and I saw somebody asked about, getting the quantitative part up, there are so many resources to help you, whether it's the classes or individuals in the Vets Club or outside. There's always somebody you can go to for a question, and they're more than willing to help with any aspect. And I wasn't totally sure about that before coming into business school, but that's definitely been surprising these first couple weeks and months.
Emily, you want to go next?
Sure, thank you. I'm Emily Gowell. I also am coming from the Navy. Although I separated, I'm a first year this year, and I was a surface warfare officer previous to that. I also worked as an aide for a couple of years. So if any of you have that experience in common, would love to chat. I really agree with Drew. It's an elite school. getting in is competitive and it can be a little bit intimidating. And I think the thing that's been so surprising is how smart, friendly, interesting, interested other students are. The Vets Club is extremely supportive here. You guys are all on this chat, and if you decide that you're interested in Wharton, like our conversation starts now and it's going to keep going like through the whole process. We started in person, so we got to meet people in person. I know a lot of the second years, Vets Club was a really important thing to lean on when they were remote, because they were still able to connect early and often. But yeah, I think that the student body has been the biggest surprise, and it shouldn't have been, but I feel like I belong here, which is really cool.
That's fair, Emily, to say like it shouldn't have been. I think you come into a place like this, and you're like the way you let off. It's an elite school, but I think that's why I asked this question about what surprised you, because it does. It's a pretty collaborative place. So I appreciate those answers. John, how about you go next?
All right, good afternoon from Philly. I'm John Aron, former Army Intel officer. Was stationed in Germany for most of my time in the Army, and then spent a little bit of time in West Africa with special operations, and then got out, and now I'm at Wharton. The thing that surprised me the most was probably just like the caliber of the instruction that you get at Wharton. So Drew and I were in the same cohort, and when you come to Wharton for preterm, you have Management 610. And both of ours Management 610 professor was Dr. Adam Grant. And like you sit in the classroom, like the first day, it's like kind of sensory overload. And then you have this guy talking to you and you're captivated by a speaker in front of you. It's something that I didn't experience as much in my undergrad times. I had some great Army leaders, but it's just like the level of instruction that you get here was pleasantly surprising, I would say.
That's awesome. Last but not least, Lee, your turn.
All right, hello everyone. I'm Lee Murphy. I was in the Navy as well, flew EP3s and also instructed on T-44s for a big chunk of my time. Between that and Wharton, I also worked at Amazon for a little bit and did some other analytics consulting. So if anyone has questions about how to merge those applications, be happy to help out with that. I'm a first year and looking to go to consulting next. And I think the biggest thing that was a surprise for me, even though I had kind of been told before, but I guess I just didn't really believe how emphatic Wharton would be about it, is how they'll push you and be accepting of the fact that school is just one of your priorities here. So you've got your social aspects, you've got all of the opportunities to like stretch yourself and have new experiences. Recruiting starts very early, so that's going to be a big priority for people that are trying to do like consulting or investment banking or any kind of mature recruiting. And your professors are understanding that you've got other things going on. And the administration is really looking to have you get that whole experience. And I thought that was really cool.
It's funny that I'm looking at Peter's question that came in. What are common struggles you see in vets during recruiting first semester? And I feel like the four of you, or three of you at least, are in it right now. What's the struggle? Like, what are you finding? Or is it too soon to say?
I can jump in. So I'm recruiting for consulting, and Lee and Emily, I believe, are as well. So I did my first case last week, and you get there, you get your case, and you're like, oh man, I haven't done mental math in a long time. Everything I did was with a calculator. So that's like the initial shock to the system. But I think everything's a learned skill, like casing's a learned skill, a week of mental math drilling, like you're going to figure it out. One benefit I think that vets have during the recruiting process is you've spoken to people before. Like you're going to start out the gate like pretty well with the networking piece and the coffee chats. You can hold a conversation really well. So there's going to be give and take. It's going to be a grind for your first semester for consulting and banking recruiting, but millions of people have done it before you.
Yeah, there's a pretty well-trod path. For the folks who don't know, we talk about recruiting kind of in two buckets. One we call mature recruiting, which is consulting and banking and big companies that have recruiting programs, and they've got summer internship programs, and they come to campus pretty religiously. And there's a real process to that. Recruiting for that started last week. So you have sort of your first quarter to get your feet under you academically. And then recruiting kicks off. January is when mature interviews happen. And then you're kind of done, should you be so lucky as to get a job through that time period. And then there's enterprise recruiting, which is a lot of places that might only hire one person every couple of years. So hedge funds, private equity firms, startups, lots of smaller like real estate companies. There are some industries, healthcare, real estate, that kind of run both types of recruiting. And so you'll hear some of that language as you're going through the process and getting to know Wharton folks. But career management is set up to support both types of searches and to really help you navigate that. And I feel like in the chair that I sit in, I've seen a big shift. Like 10 years ago, it used to be most of the veterans liked consulting and banking because it kind of mimics some of the process that you're used to professionally. If you do this for 2 years, you get promoted. You do this for 3 years, you get promoted, kind of thing. Now, in the last 10 years, we've seen a lot more guys and girls who are like, I'm done with that. I want nothing to do with being on a treadmill. I want something that I can get my hands dirty faster. I want to start my own thing. I want to work on a smaller team. So we see a lot of both, and we're, Wharton's here and ready to support you on both sides. These are the fixed questions we have. Now it's your turn. I'm going to kind of stop talking and let you guys ask questions. And to the Wharton crowd on the call, if our participants don't ask questions, if you guys want to kick it off with something you wondered about when you were going through the process, that would be helpful.
To our attendees, you can feel free to unmute yourself or put it right in the chat. That's really fine. Winston, I saw you raised your hand. Would you like to go first?
Can't hear you. Yeah, there you are.
Sorry about that. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for doing this, by the way. I'm Winston Posvar. I'm a Medical Service Corps officer at Fort Bragg, and I'm going to get an MBA this coming fall, hopefully, on active duty, and then I'm going back to the Army afterwards. And I have a question specifically for Drew. I was curious, how is the MBA experience for you compared to your other classmates who are transitioning? And how's that affected your internship, applications?
Yeah, so it's a little different in terms of the stress that the other guys are going through right now. So in terms of internship, I have some very specific rules within the Navy that I have to play within. And some of the more mature industries don't really fit into that in terms of next summer. So I'm not looking at consulting or investment banking. The opportunities that I could be open to really open up in this winter, spring timeframe, that enterprise, whether it's an unpaid thing with a startup or some of the smaller shops, or the types of things that I'm looking into, just because when I'm done at Wharton, I owe at least 3 years back. So it's hard to do an internship with not looking for a follow-on opportunity with some of the more mature industries. And career management, in August, when you first get here, you have an introductory meeting with either a specific industry advisor or just your general cluster advisor. And you're able to talk through those different types of opportunities, and they really lay out steps you can take and really help you line up your interests with your potential opportunities or what you want to get into in that internship timeframe.
Awesome, thank you. Do you know what internship you're going to do yet, or has it not been?
No, I really won't start getting in depth with that type of thing until probably the January timeframe, as more the enterprise stuff starts to open up and more of those sessions come out. Yeah.
Do you have any idea what you want to do?
I don't. The main one is more of a startup, something with a smaller team type thing, just because, again, following in the way my sponsorship is set up, I got to take an unpaid opportunity. So really playing on some of the skills from the military, the small team leadership, the organization skills, that type of thing. Some of those smart startups out there really interest me, and I think I could lend value and really help out in that type of environment, especially since, again, after the summer, I'm back here and then I'm back in the Navy.
Makes sense. Awesome. Thank you.
I see we have 3 more hands. Neil, you came up first. Would you like to go?
Hey everyone, thanks for doing this. I'm Neil. I'm an active duty EOD officer. I'm stationed at Fort Campbell, but I'm currently deployed in the Middle East. My question actually involves like post acceptance. If we're fortunate enough to get accepted somewhere, how do you recommend filling that gap from when you're accepted to when you matriculate? Like, is it worth your time to take classes? Like, should you just do nothing and relax? Like what's your recommendation leading up to when you actually enroll?
I think I would answer this differently than the current students will. So I'll go first, which is, I think you should spend time with your family. I think you should drink some beer and relax. The program's pretty full on. And if you've been deployed and you haven't been around much, your friends and family are going to want to see you because you're going to kind of disappear again for a couple of years. So my advice is spend some time with your nearest and dearest and have a couple beers at the same time. But I'll let the students answer that as well.
I'll let Lee speak up in a second because I think he had a little bit longer of a gap. But some of that may depend on exactly how much time you're talking about. I think one of the things that is important to spend some time doing if you do have a little bit of time is nothing formal, but just really, whether it's talking to members of the vet club at the school where you've gotten accepted or other friends of yours who've gone through the transition, starting to think about what it is that you are interested in doing post MBA. There is opportunity when you get here within the first quarter to kind of explore some of these established course or work tracks come pretty quick. And 2 years seems like a lot of time, but it's not. So relax, recuperate, kind of come up with a little bit of a plan, not necessarily how you want to get to that, but what you're interested in doing when you actually do graduate.
Yeah, that would be largely what I would say is potentially the amount of time you've got. Definitely, like, take the time for you and enjoy being out and relax and all that. Me personally, like, I can only do that for so long, right? And then I'm going to be bored. So if you do have an opportunity, like Emily was saying, to do something that you think you might be interested in, like the analytics consulting thing for me was great because I still do want to go into consulting, but I know the kind of consulting that I don't want to do. So ruling something out can be just as valuable as, you know, figuring out what your calling is, because then you're not wasting your time when you get here in the fall. Another plug that I would have, just if you've got the time, again, relax first, is Wharton has, like, once you get in, they've got the math for business, and they've got several courses that you can use to help waive some of the required courses. Like, I waived accounting, and that was able to free up some time in the fall semester that is going to make this quarter with recruiting a little bit easier. And they're not big time sucks, but if you just got the extra time, it's right there and can be beneficial, I think.
Awesome. Appreciate it, guys.
Peter, I saw your hand was up next.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So I'm Pete Sunderland. I'm out here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I'm an active duty infantry officer transitioning. Curious to hear what your recommendations are to get up to speed on sort of what you want to do post business school. I know we all do research and network and put things on our application, but you have very little firsthand exposure to the different fields and industries. So what are some recommendations that you guys have prior to recruiting to really hone in on that, as opposed to making it feel like you're taking a guess at what you want to do post MBA?
Anyone
I can
jump in?
start. It's kind of a weird answer, but you just have to talk to people. Like, talk to people that have been through the process. I was lucky enough that a couple of the guys I served with were a year ahead of me and went through the recruiting process. And some of them already exited out of MBA programs into different industries. Whether it was one was a banker, one did consulting, and one did startups. So I had a little panel I could talk to and gauge their experiences. I've ruled out banking very quickly. I know some vets are going into banking just because of the hours and the type of work that they do. And I'm going to recruit for consulting just so I can get larger exposure into different industries. And then, am I going to stay a consultant forever? I don't know if I get a consulting gig, but I know it's a good stepping stone for me and to exit into something else.
And sorry, I just would say too, Wharton Vets Club can be a resource for you. I was similar. I had some friends I could lean on, but I think as I was starting my application process, the Vets Club connected me to a couple of different alums who were working in different spaces. So even before it was anything kind of trying to recruit or make connections that were going to, it was not like that at all. It was really just information finding, fact finding, trying to understand what the opportunities are and what they look like.
And kind of on the flip side of what John was saying with what the challenges of recruiting can be, I mean, we do a lot of mental math in the flight station, so I was maybe a little bit more ready for that part. But I think a lot of people in the military do have trouble like asking for help. So like just getting on someone's calendar to do the cases would be a bigger challenge for me. And same kind of thing with what you're talking about now. Like, just know like other vets are going to be more than happy to take your call or take your question. And when you're in the seat in a couple of years, you'll see the same thing, that like you're excited to do these kind of things. So people are happy to help you. Don't think that you're inconveniencing them.
Thanks for the feedback, guys. That's really helpful. It sounds like a lot can be done prior to even arrival. Fortunate enough to get a slot, so appreciate it.
Richard, I think you're next.
Hey, thanks for calling me. I appreciate you guys taking the time to spend with us today. My name is Richard St Onge. I'm an aviation officer with the 160th SOAR out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. My question's kind of for the whole panel. So I guess, as you evaluated, I'm sure all of you had multiple options, and obviously Wharton is an extremely elite school, but as you evaluated the culture of similar programs versus Wharton, what was kind of that, the tipping point for you that made you choose Wharton?
I can start, I guess. So I think that for me, it was really important to me when I was making a decision for an MBA that I was picking the right school for me. Wharton is highly respected. It definitely is like one of the, maybe arguably the best school you could get into. But I really wanted to consider where I was going to find something that felt right to me. And I picked it for a few reasons. One, quantitative background is I don't have a very quantitative background. And so I was really interested in shoring up some real hard skills. I want to understand how to actually do accounting and statistics because I didn't have a background in that. And I thought that was important context for me. So that made it appealing to some other schools that have slightly different curriculums. Another thing for me was actually Philadelphia. I really like the idea of being on an East Coast city. Philly's a really cool city. It's really fun to live in. And being somewhere that was central and connected and diverse was something that was really important to me. And then the third one was what we talked about a little bit earlier about the people in the community. It's a big school. We can say it over and over again, but I think the more that you actually get a chance to talk to current students, you'll find that there's something really special here about the people.
Yeah, I'll hop on too. So I went to Penn undergrad. I was in the College of Arts and Sciences, so I wasn't a part of Wharton. There was the liberal arts side, and I was very excited at the opportunity to come back to Philly. Philly's a very special place. I'm not from here, but loved my time here, loved the culture, loved the people. And then when it came to Wharton in particular, one thing that stood out with me, like most of us, I didn't have the background, but Wharton offers the flexible core that lets you kind of tailor the core classes you have to take to what you're interested in. And that's something that's unique to Wharton, and I appreciated the flexibility. So the combination of that, and then just knowing what the campus, what the city had to offer, and I couldn't wait to come back.
Great answers, guys. Thanks.
One other thing I'll add quickly to Drew's point, because I forgot about it, is the University of Pennsylvania as a whole institution is huge, and there's a lot of really cool opportunities here. I don't know if there's anyone on this call who's examined dual degree programs. I don't think any of us on the panel are on it, but many of our classmates are involved in dual programs, either getting a master's at Lauder or even a JD MBA. Or others, and there is the opportunity to take courses at other Penn schools as well while you are enrolled at Wharton, and different specialties can kind of can take you down those paths.
Thanks to everyone. Ryan, I believe you're next on our list.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, so everybody, hello. My name is Ryan. I'm an Army Aviation and Intelligence Officer stationed in the DC area. I just had a question for some of the panelists, both around the student experience. So my first question is, could somebody maybe talk to either the path or how competitive it is to become an executive or officer on a student club, whether it's a vets club or in another affinity or professional club? And then my second question for a separate panelist would be, could you speak to the academic experience and how you bid for classes and a little bit more about that process? Thank you.
Emily, I think you are a board member, right? I can take the second. I can take the academic one if you want to take the first one.
Sure. So there are so many clubs to get involved with at Wharton, and these guys are going to probably roll their eyes because a lot of what I'm going to say, I feel like, is what we talked about in preterm. But you can, as you're examining the things that you're interested in getting involved in, it can be useful to think of clubs as like push clubs and pull clubs. Activities that you're going to do that you want to really give back to and put some labor into, and clubs that you really just want to experience. So for me, I joined the food club. It's been busy, so I haven't been able to go to, for example, a student chef dinner. But for some people, that is something that they can push. They can get involved, they can plan, they can host people at their house and, cook a cuisine that's a specialty to them. Or it can be a pull club and you can sign up and go attend and eat some great food. Vets Club is a pretty big club. There are a lot of veterans here at the school. And I was really interested in getting involved just because of how key they were to kind of making my decision to come here, and then it did feel like a community. And I think that if you are interested in participating, you'll find somewhere where you can help to contribute. The other thing I'd mention for Vets Club and boards, again, is there are board positions, and then there's also participating and giving back in many different ways. And the real motivator for that, I think, for most people is just what you want to do. You have a career that you're coming out of that's really going to be what's impressive to employers. Your participation at clubs in Wharton really should be about, what you want to spend your time doing and who you want to spend your time with. But lots of opportunities.
Yeah, one thing to add about clubs, if you're interested in rugby, I would highly suggest joining. I joined this year and it's been like the best club I think I've joined, other than the Vets Club, which is definitely number one. But each club has like career resources and everything. Like we're doing, there's a little casing interview piece for like within the rugby club. So folks who've done internships there. So it's just what you want to put into it is what you're going to get out of it. With regards to academics, there's a course match that you're going to do if you come to Wharton right before, I believe during preterm. And it's essentially a algorithm, and you put in weights towards certain classes. We were lucky enough before the first semester, one of the vets did a quick Zoom. It was like, hey, if you're recruiting for consulting, these are some of the courses that I think you should take, and these are some of the professors I think you should take them with. Unlike Lee, I didn't waive out of accounting, so I'm an accounting 613, and I picked a specific professor based on a recommendation from a second year vet, and it's been awesome. Like, this guy's made accounting enjoyable, which I know can be like a brutal topic for other people. But that's something we can definitely figure out once you guys get here.
Thank you.
Nicholas.
Hi, how you doing, everybody? Thanks a lot for putting this on to the staff and current students. So my name is Nick Maggielli. I'm a Special Forces Detached Commander down here at 7th Special Forces Group in Florida. My question is more so for the current students. What are some particular classes, perhaps unique to Wharton, that have really had a major impact on you, and either confirmed what your goal is for post-MBA or perhaps altered what that's going to be? Thanks.
I'll say one course that was big is the one we all have to take, Management 610, Foundation of Teamwork and Leadership. It's a part of preterm. And just, we all come in with a lot of leadership experience and unique leadership experience. And in this course, we definitely apply it and share it with our classmates. But, I kind of expected it, but it was still refreshing to see the different experiences and perspectives that they bring. There's all different types of leadership that come from outside of the military perspective. And when we're sitting down, part of this class is you discuss basically leadership and teamwork theory for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then you go into a simulation with your learning team where you're building up a company in a different industry, and you run it through, and it does these different computer simulations for profitability and whatnot. And you're given these different challenges, and you're working with these with your learning team, comes from all over the world, all different types of industries, all different ages too, and perspectives. And that class, to see what you talked about 2 hours before and then applying it during the simulation, just reaffirmed that this was the right place. I made the right decision academically, and reinforced the leadership experiences I had, and then just how much there was still to learn and apply in the civilian sector.
Yeah, so one for me is marketing. I had a guy named Jonah Berger, and doesn't have quite the name recognition as maybe Adam Grant, but if you look him up, he's got almost as many New York Times lists of books. And although that class took a disproportionate amount of work and effort, lots of cases, it was super interesting. You see how much more of just beyond advertising marketing is, and how it's really everything that touches the consumer. So even though I'm still recruiting for consulting, it's often a good idea to go into that with like what kind of function or industry you'd like to hone in on, at least within a few years. So that kind of has given me some more direction on like what kind of courses I want to take at Wharton and how to better pitch that route that I'd like to go within consulting.
We're all still taking our core courses, but they've been like John said, accounting, I was dreading it. It's like maybe one of my favorite classes. It's hard because there are a lot of good ones. So I don't know if it outbeats, but there's a lot of classes I'm excited to take next semester too as I start to specialize.
Thanks for that, Nick. Todd, I believe you're next on our list.
Hey, everybody. Appreciate you taking the time for this today. My name is Todd McDonald. I'm an active duty artillery officer over at Fort Campbell. My question, every, top business school has the things that differentiate them from everybody else, but what have you all noticed that like Wharton, the organization or institution, takes pride in as far as those differentiators? Could it be, maybe it's just the employment report, maybe it's the flexible core classes, but what would you guys say for that?
One thing. Oh no, go ahead.
You go ahead. I was just gonna say, it's a lot of the things we've already talked about, like Drew bringing up the management 6-10, the leadership class. Wharton has the historic kind of reputation of being the finance school, but it's so much more than that, and they really promote like the team learning aspect, even in classes that you wouldn't expect, like our statistics course. The majority of the homeworks have been team-based, and you're not just putting an answer on a piece of paper. You're like working through it with your classmates to come up with a better answer than you would on your own. And they really push that in a lot of different aspects.
I think, and obviously the folks who actually work for the school can correct us too, but I think that Wharton is like a big school made small. So you could have, and I'm sure I have classmates who are doing like every single thing like different from me, other than maybe management 6-10, like all different clubs, completely different recruiting paths. There's so many things that you can get involved in and different courses that you can take. Wharton does have majors. There's a core that really takes up a lot of the crux of the education that is really important and is important that we all understand. But you can take courses in, again, other schools within campus. You have access to all those resources. But the school is very intentional about making it feel like a community and breaking down the 850 plus people in our class into different groups and subgroups and different combinations, such that you see people you recognize all the time and it really feels like a community. And I think that the school really does a good job of that.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, both of you.
Aron.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. Thanks for hosting this today. Kieran Howard here. I'm a detachment OIC at the Special Forces Group at Fort Campbell. One question I had is, I'm finishing up a master's in analytics at Georgia Tech here this summer. I was wondering how much that would open up my course schedule to, place out of certain classes and do other things like nonprofit board fellows, maybe for my 2-year.
I can't speak.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that could be a better question suited for either Lee, who placed out of a class, or the folks on the administration.
But I would say as a student, coming in as someone who has a master's in something, you actually will be in pretty good company. It's amazing to hear what some of our classmates have accomplished prior to Wharton, and people, we have like MDs in our class. We have people with masters or education or just experience in a whole range of things. But in terms of specific course requirements, that probably is better suited for the administration.
Yeah, Kieran, I think it depends on what the courses are that you've taken and how they map over to the Wharton curriculum. But it's absolutely a conversation to have with an academic advisor, because it's, in a lot of cases, depending on what you've taken, it is a nice way to free up some of your core to take more electives earlier in the program.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys.
Tom, I think you're the last one with your hand raised, and that's actually perfect because we have about 7 minutes left. So maybe we can do a round robin of all our panelists after that.
Nice. Thanks for hosting this. Excuse me. I'm an enlisted Marine infantry guy with 5 years of experience in investment management. I was curious how you see enlisted stacking up in the classroom and throughout the program. And maybe a secondary question, how does the school look at leadership in an enlisted guy without the sexy officer title?
So I'll take this one. I have a soft spot in my heart for enlisted guys. I think it's, we have, like I said in my opening remarks, we really look for a lot of diversity. And I think that there's a lot that, enlisted folks bring to the program. We have, and the other question we get sometimes along this line is guys who enlisted when they were 18. They didn't go to college right away. We've had great success we had one guy a couple of years ago that tried to talk his way in without an undergrad degree. And he was like, but I have so much military experience and I've gone to all the military trainings. And I was like, I just need an undergrad degree. But we have guys who've gone to like fully online undergrad programs and they show up. We had a guy a couple of years ago who on the first day of class came into my office and he's like, it's the first time I sat in a classroom for college. First time I've been in a classroom since high school. So there's a lot that we think folks bring. So Tom, I wouldn't, I saw Casey put it in one of the chat things. We read to admit. When we get an application, we are not reading it looking for ways to pull people out. We're looking at how do we pull people through. And I think that everything that you put into your application that makes you the candidate that you are, that is applying to business school, we are looking at as a reason to try to get folks in. We're limited by the number of seats we have, but the diversity of experience, of viewpoint, of academic background, of type of service that you had, that all plays into it. It's not just about sexy titles and officer bars and that kind of stuff.
Nice, thank you. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather as well.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
We just hit we answered everyone's questions, which I think is amazing. Maybe we have about 4 minutes left. Maybe I'd love to hear our panelists just words of advice as former applicants, or just words of advice in general, as to wrap this up. And thank you everyone, specifically our panelists and Mary Ellen, for taking the time to speak with us today.
I'll kick it off. I saw a couple questions in the chat and I didn't mention this in my intro. I am here with my family. I'm married and I have a kid. Wharton has been very family friendly. Welcomed my wife in with open arms. Kids club's great if anybody has family. So much so that Thursday is the kids club Halloween party from 3 to 5. And then right after it rolls into pub, which is the weekly kind of get together for Wharton down at the 23rd Street Armory, where there's food, drink, DJ, good time. So the kids will be at that in their costumes. So it's been very, very welcoming, very easy to bring them in. And they've really felt like a part of this journey with me, which is something I was worried about when I was applying to get an MBA because of all the, outside of academic requirements. But Wharton really tries to make that easier and has been great. So I'll throw my email in the chat if anybody else has any other questions about really anything but that specifically too.
One piece of advice that I got was, or two, one was your GMAT or GRE score is just one part of your application. Like, don't freak out about it, right? I took the GRE 3 times and I was still like a little bit weary. It was like, do I need to take it a 4th time? I spoke with a couple of folks in the Vets Club and they were like, no, I think you're okay. You need to work not just on that score, but it's like the holistic application, like your story, your resume. So don't just get sucked into the number. And the second piece is apply when you feel like you're going to put your best application forward. So if unless you're under some like crazy time constraint that you have to apply round 1, if you don't think you're going to put the best story together, you're going to have your best score, it's okay to apply round 2. So don't rush it if you're not going to be comfortable when you hit submit.
That's good advice from both you guys. I just say thanks everyone for being here and for getting excited about it. You know, this is a decision that I think all of us came to in different paths, and it felt like we were chewing on it for a long time. And I can say very confidently that by the time I made it and then now being here, it was a really, it was the right choice for me, and it was a good path. So you reach out to any of us individually. I'm going to put the general Wharton Vets Club email in the chat too if you don't have that already. And that's we'll connect you to people who can answer specific questions that you may have, especially if you've got unique situations, how to pay for it, family reserves, what the heck am I going to do with my life? You know, we're really excited to connect.
Oh, so I guess we're a little bit over, but my piece of advice, it's easy to just apply to like all the M7 schools, but both for your application and for your own sake, you need to know why that specific program. And the best way to do that is by talking to people. Like I only knew one person at Wharton, but if you go on your LinkedIn, you'll have a second degree connection. You can just, like Emily just put out, actually do email the Vets Club. They'll put you in touch with somebody from your community, or at least very close to it. And having those stories of their experiences is going to help you in your application and actually figure out what the best fit is for you.
Thank you to everyone. Amazing, amazing words of advice. And I think the message I always tell every applicant is don't self-select out. We read to admit, trust yourself, trust the best application you can do. And we want to see your application. Do not self-select out. Thank you, everyone, Emily, John, Lee, Drew, and especially Mary Ellen for taking the time to join us today. This has been incredibly impactful. And I know how busy everyone is at this point in the semester. I know you're starting a new set of classes, so thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break for all our attendees. If you could report back around 5:06, and I'll kick it over to Quentin at that moment, and we'll start our applications tip session. So go get a drink of water or food or restroom break, and we'll see you back here at 5:06.
Okay, welcome back everyone, and thank you for returning. I hope you enjoyed our student panel led by Casey and Mary Ellen Riley, our Vice Dean. A lot of good information, a lot of good questions. You know, I was listening to the questions that were on your mind, and you know, you're at a really important decision point in your lives and careers, and you know, hopefully you got a sense that this place could be a good place for you to continue to grow and develop both professionally as well as academically and personally. So with that said, if you're thinking about applying, I'd like to walk you through our admissions process. And so here at the Wharton School, for our MBA admissions program, we do something called holistic admissions. And essentially what holistic admissions means is that there are a variety of factors that we're looking at when we're considering your application, some of which are quantitative in nature. And you can imagine your GPA of your undergraduate institution, the standardized test scores, but most of which are qualitative in nature. There are a multitude of factors that we're considering when we're thinking about your application. You know, I know there's a lot of attention and a lot of conversation around your GMAT score, your GRE score, because it's quantifiable and something easy to point to. But very often that's not the make or break for an admissions decision here at the Wharton School. We have some other philosophical tenets that we abide by, as both Mary Ellen and Casey were referencing. We read to admit, which means that we take a positive view of your experiences and your life progression. Essentially, you know, we are looking for reasons to admit you, not to exclude you from the class. We assume the best about the choices that you've made, but we also recognize that everybody's context is a little bit different. You know, some folks may be applying to Wharton with 2 Wharton MBA parents, and they've gone off and done work in investment banking and venture capital. And other folks may have been raised by, you know, their I don't know, their grandmother who might have finished high school, let alone college. And so, you know, we take that into account, people's different life paths and the opportunities that have been available to them as a function of those life paths. We do independent reads, which means that when your application is submitted, Casey may be the first reader on your application. She'll go through and write up a summary of your application portfolio and offer her guidance around the case. But Casey is not the only voice that's going to weigh in on your application. I may read your application next, and I won't see what Casey wrote about your case. I'll make my own independent judgment about the facts in your case, and then when committee time comes around, we'll look at both of those reads and make a collective decision with other admissions officers in the room. Our process really is designed to reduce bias and noise. We all have our own biases. We do bias training here at Wharton, and we try to stay cognizant of particular biases. And so we try to keep out of the process to the best degree that we can. And our goal is for everyone to have a fair and equal shot at admission. Next slide, please. So essentially what we're looking at when we're looking at your application are these 6 components. So as I was mentioning, the context, your background information and biographical information provides a kind of starting point for us to thinking about your application. Your extracurricular activities and community involvement. A lot of times people think this is about leadership, and yes, leadership can be a part and parcel of this section, but really it's an equity section. No matter who you are, where you're from around the world, how much money you do or don't have, everybody in the world has 24 hours. And what you choose to do with those 24 hours says a lot about who you are and what you value. And so, you know, we understand that there's some time that you're going to devote to your career. There's going to be some time that you're devoting to academics. There's some time you have to devote to your family and, you know, personal self-care. But with that discretionary time, how are you using that time? That's really the question that we're getting at. You know, with extracurricular and community involvement, you know, sometimes people say, "Oh, I have a child. I don't have extracurricular activities that I'm involved with." Yes, you do. You have a family. A family definitely takes up a lot of time. So please share that information with us in that extracurricular activities and community involvement. More broadly, we're also looking to understand how you might connect with other members of the Wharton community. Part of what makes students successful here at Wharton is their engagement outside of the classroom. When they feel a sense of belongingness and community with clubs and organizations, it doesn't matter which clubs or organizations, they do better academically here at Wharton. And so we want to make sure that this is going to be a good fit for you and a place where you're really going to thrive. So academics and testing, as I mentioned, that's looking at your undergraduate transcript, as well as your standardized test scores. You know, for Wharton, it is a selective place, and we don't have cutoffs for consideration. You know, the best guidance that I could offer about your transcript is really to have more vowels and consonants on your transcript. If you have more vowels and consonants, you're in a good spot. But we're open. In terms of testing, we require that you take either the GMAT or the GRE. We don't have a preference for either of the tests. We want you to do the best you can. you know, our military members are coming from a variety of circumstances. So sometimes they can only take a standardized test once. Conditions. Sometimes folks don't have appropriate time to prepare. We get that. While our average scores are pretty high, our range is broad, which means that there are pathways to be admitted to Wharton. So don't get discouraged if you don't hit the exact score that you're looking for. You can still be a very competitive applicant in our pool because of considerations like your professional experience and your resume. So when we're looking at applications, we like to see that students have a track record of success, not just in the classroom, but also in their work environment. And so if you've been promoted, you know, that's a good thing, whether in the context of the military or in civilian life. In the corporate sector, you can make a strong case for yourself that you're an engaged and successful member of your workplace community. Essays, we have essentially two questions that we ask. Essentially, the first question is, what do you want to get from the Wharton MBA experience? And the second question essentially is, what do you want to give to the Wharton MBA experience? We're not trying to trick you. We've designed these questions so that they can be transparent and understood by all. We're not looking for prescriptive answers. We've made these questions broad, kind of intentionally. Certainly answer the question, what you'd like to get from Wharton and what you'd like to give to Wharton, but you do have license to inject some of your professional purpose and the reason more broadly that you're pursuing a particular career path and a set of academic interests. And then finally, letters of recommendation. We ask for 2 letters of recommendation. Ideally, one would come from your current supervisor. We know that that is not always possible. So if it has to be a former supervisor, that can be acceptable as well. Next slide, please. And so what we're thinking about when we're evaluating candidates for admission are these factors that are delineated in this particular slide. Proven leadership, your evolution of responsibilities in the workplace, certainly your short-term and long-term goals. And I would say that the short-term goal to some degree is more important in the sense that, you know, when you come to Wharton for business school, we want to make sure that you can achieve the you have for yourself professionally, and we're kind of directly responsible for getting you to that next step that you're hoping to get to with career management and all the other resources that we have available here. So really having some clarity around that short-term goal in particular, that can be really helpful for us in understanding what you want out of your MBA experience. And we understand that not everybody has perfect clarity around exactly where they want to land, and that's okay. So if you're coming to Wharton to pivot, to make some sort of career pivot, that's completely acceptable. And I would say that most students who are here in business school are looking to change their trajectory in one way or another, whether it's experimenting in different industries or taking on a different role within their current industry. There are a lot of, this is a really fertile ground for changes, transitions, and trying out new things. We want you to be imaginative and creative when you're here at Wharton. So let's go to the interview. After you've submitted those 6 components of the application portfolio, they are read and evaluated by our small but mighty admissions committee, who you'll meet shortly after this exercise. And while we're reading and evaluating and selecting candidates, which is a really tough job because, as you can imagine, the Wharton pool is a self-selecting population of, some of the most talented, ambitious, hardworking, thoughtful, kind, interesting people on any college university campus. It is a really tough job to select who will go forth. We identify a subset of those applicants to engage in our interview process. And our interview process is a little bit different from some other business schools in that we have what we call a team-based discussion, a team-based interview. So you'll be in a room with, well, at this point, you'll be in a virtual room. This is a pre-pandemic picture of what the interview experience looked like. But currently you'll be in a Zoom room with 5 or 6 other candidates who are applying to Wharton's business school. And we assign you a task, we give you a prompt, and ask you to work together collaboratively to come up with a solution to the prompt. We also, and that team-based discussion lasts for about 30 minutes. After that 30-minute group interview, you have an opportunity to sit down in one-on-one setting with your facilitator. And your facilitator is going to ask you a couple of questions about your interest in Wharton and why you'd like to come to business school and get to know you a little bit more. And that's essentially our interview process. There are no tricks to the interview process. We just want you to be yourself. We want to understand how you interact with a broad range of people. One of the distinctions about Wharton is that we are a very diverse community along a number of different lines. Certainly in terms of citizenship, folks are coming from around the country. In terms of racial and ethnic background, folks are coming from a variety of different backgrounds. Religious preferences, political ideation, folks are coming from a lot of different backgrounds. And what's important to us is that people feel a sense of inclusion and belongingness when they're in their classroom setting, when they're in their affinity groups, in any clubs and organizations that they choose to affiliate themselves with, because people are trying to solve big problems here. And if you're trying to solve big problems, it requires input from a variety of different types of people, and people do their best for a sense of community. So I'm not telling you all anything that you don't know as military leaders already. So bring that same ethos around leadership to the team-based discussion will serve you well. Well, now that you've had an opportunity to serve as an admissions committee, we'd like for you to meet the Wharton MBA admissions committee. So I'll have my colleagues introduce themselves, maybe in alphabetical order by last name. Maybe Casey wants to kick it off just one more time to refresh everybody's
memory. Can I ask to kick it to someone else? Because I am really quickly, I'm pinning everyone and I just want to make sure I pin AdCom first. So I'm going to go last, if that's okay.
That works.
So alphabetically, that means I would go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeb Butler. I'm Director of Operations and also an AdCom member at Wharton. We're really happy that you're joining us this afternoon. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules and really just want to help you however we can. So whatever you want to learn about the admissions process, we're here to help.
Bill, I think you're next.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I'm next. I had to quickly do my alphabetical order assessment as more coffee brews. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I see some familiar faces from an event I recently completed with some of our peers, but it's truly an honor to be sharing with you a little bit more about the Wharton MBA. My name is Billy Howder. I know it says William. That's just what's on the birth certificate. Everybody knows me as Billy. That's perfectly fine. Disclaimer, I am coming to you from home. I have a 1-year-old and 2 dogs. So if you hear crying or barking or something that's in between, it's probably one of those 3. But I oversee our enrollment management processes, the team-based discussion, and our on-campus recruitment efforts. So looking forward to sharing with you a little bit more about Wharton here.
All right, I got everybody pinned, so I'm good to go. Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Casey Barnes, Director of External Engagement for the MBA admissions team. It's been such a delight getting to know all of you tonight, and thank you for being such wonderful active participants. And here to answer any questions you might have.
I think I bring up the rear of the alphabet, Jake Kohler. I'm the director of the MOLIS Advanced Access Program, and just, thrilled to be with all of you. I'm sure this was said earlier today, but thank you for your service. Thank you for being part of this. And yeah, look forward to chatting alongside my colleagues.
Okay, so this is a real open forum where no question is off limits. You can feel free to ask any question that you'd like. You can either raise your hand virtually, you could do it physically, or why don't you just do those 2 things? Or I guess you could drop a question into the chat too if you're not in a position where you can do those.
I'll ask the first question. You have our take on those last 2 candidates. What was the admissions take on those 2 candidates?
Karen, I have good news and I have bad news. So the good news is we would say that no matter who we read, they're amazing candidates, and we read to admit, and we will find all the positive ways to look to find ways to admit them. The bad news is 4 of the 5 of us did not read them because they were we were in other work obligations. And Jake, you might have read them, I'm not sure. So we did not, but yes, so great, good and bad news.
I'll only add, I wasn't part of the creation of these, but in most years, we actually create, we changed some of the details, but some of these form from individuals who we had previously admitted. So I think a general assumption could be both of these were likely people who were admitted by the admissions committee as a whole, with obviously details changed.
And I will say, we did provide an application, but there were some missing components from the application to give you the fullest picture of the application. So, but yes, we love them both, and that's why we offered them to you, because it's a hard decision. We were busy reading real applications from people who applied this year for round 1. All right, how about Aron?
Good afternoon. I was wondering what kind of opportunities or what it looks like to have some kind of like faculty mentorship opportunities while in the MBA program, and how you go about that.
There isn't a formalized program for that, Kieran, but I think a lot of our students, because they're not first-time college students, they're actual adults who understand that networking is very important. A lot of our students feel very comfortable fostering really good working relationships with our faculty members and finding mentors that way. Faculty are generally hard pressed to say, no, I'm not going to take on a research assistant who's smart and can do a good job, right? So as a general matter, that's pretty easy to do at Wharton. Additionally, we have a pretty large and diverse faculty, so there are a lot of really great opportunities. But frankly, the onus is on the student. And I think the type of student who tends to be attracted to Wharton is the type who would be willing to engage faculty and say, look, you're working on X, Y, and Z. I'm interested in X, Y, and Z. How can we work together? And they're going to bring you on board. It's a really, really wonderful way to bring synergy to the community.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Neo, you're up.
Hey guys, I appreciate you spending some time to answer our questions. I was just curious, what are the most common, maybe 1 or 2 mistakes that you see veterans making in their applications?
I'll add one of the items that I'll say military candidates or veteran candidates have to battle that most people don't, is that some of the information of your resumes I know is limited. There's review processes that you have to go through other people so that secrets or that certain information is not shared. And it's a little bit, it's not that there's an error here, but I think it's the balance of demonstrating the skills you've developed, the leadership, the impact you've had, the communication skills you've had, the analytical skills, the evolution of your trajectory, which it's not that military candidates error, it's just you face some hurdles that the common candidate who's applying from a consulting firm, bank, etc., don't face because they aren't handcuffed in that way. So I think my best advice is to, as you're navigating that process, as you're getting approval of what you can place on your resume, make sure that you are balancing with some people who might have navigated into the business school space and what advice they might give and how you can frame different pieces of information so it is articulated in ways that are approvable. So those are the only thoughts I had relative to your community.
My other piece of advice, not mistakes that are made, but I say this to a lot of applicants, and this is across the board, military, non-military. I think a lot of people assume that every applicant has to fit into a very specific bucket and or model of what they need to look like, the proverbial all our applicants, to get into Wharton. And that's not the case. We want you, whomever you are, to be completely authentic to what your experience is, be completely authentic to what you want to achieve in the future, lean into how you've, and I steal this from Jeb regularly, how you bloom where you've planted, how have you had success in any job you've had. Don't try to be anything you're not, because that's not going to come through as an authentic and really genuine application. The most genuine applications are those who stick to truly what they believe in their insides. So don't try to be anything that you're not, be completely authentic to who you are.
Yeah, I think as an extension of that, Casey, I think something that I see sometimes with military candidates is kind of a downplaying of what they're bringing to the table just because they don't come from consulting or investment banking. That's not all that we're looking for. Yes, there's a lot of self-selection involved that allows, for those types of candidates to come in. But I think it's good to understand that from our perspective, and we're the people who bring in the class every year. We find your experience really valuable. We understand that you bring a perspective to the classroom that is truly unique and just really allows you to knowledge share ways to problem solve that are not ordinary by any stretch of the imagination. So I think don't downplay your leadership, don't downplay what you're bringing to the table, especially as you're crafting your essays. It's going to be really vital, and we find it to be really crucial to having what we feel is a well-rounded classroom. So your perspective is really important at Wharton.
Awesome. Really appreciate it, guys.
John, you're up. John?
Thank you. My name's John Paquette. My question was, a few of my peers have had issues with their end of obligation service being unpredictable and changing, even during application processes to schools after they get out. Say there's an application, a person submits an application and then they find out that their end of obligation service to the military has been extended. Are they able to apply for deferments, or are there ways to deal with those situations? Thank you.
Bill.
So as I mentioned earlier, with overseeing enrollment management, that comes with waitlist, deferrals, extensions. And John, to your question, for military students, the answer is yes. We will certainly work with any student with military service that had a circumstance beyond their control that means their service is going to be extended. I think the caveat that I stress to everybody is we will only grant deferrals for 1 year. We will maybe, again, it's rare, extend it for 2. So if this is something where this is going to be extending longer than 2, or you're just not entirely sure, what those commitments are going to look like, I would then certainly err on the side of caution and apply a little bit closer to when you definitively know you're going to be getting out of the service. Same thing, if you have a really high confidence level that this is the last year, or you are already out and it is highly unlikely that you are certainly going to be seeing your service extend, by all means, feel free to apply to the Wharton School this year. But if you are still in a 50-50, you're not sure, you have to think about it for longer than 10 seconds, just give yourself another year and a little bit more time just to make sure that you can get out. We certainly want to make sure that when you are being admitted, you're coming into this year's class, but we will only make these exceptions for veterans because we know that these are limitations and restrictions that are certainly beyond your control.
Thank you.
Bill, could you also talk a little bit, kind of as an adjunct to what you just commented, could you talk a little bit about kind of special situations with military and any kind of accommodations we're able to offer in terms of the team-based discussion?
Oh yeah, sure. So the nice thing is also with the team-based discussion, once upon a time when we were completely in person, we would do team-based discussions in a virtual setting for vets, but also we do understand that sometimes if you are still active service and you are going to be in a submarine for the next 2-3 months, or you have very limited access to be able to complete a team-based discussion, we'll do emergency one-on-one interviews with you that still hit home to some of the mission and vision and objectives of the Wharton MBA program, so that we have some information and insight regarding your candidacy from an interview. Our goal is to put everyone through the team-based discussion because it really does replicate everything about this team-based MBA environment and program here. But we also understand that if there's a really extreme extenuating circumstance, I've had vets that are on active duty in the middle of the desert, they can only get to a satellite phone. We would certainly work with them to make sure that we can accommodate them that way. Same thing with vets that are like, our sub is surfacing, I have 3 hours in Iceland, then yes, we will find a way to make sure you get a one-on-one and your interview complete. The hard part is if you get the good news, you just kind of are going to have to wait until you resurface again to find out what happened with that decision.
Okay, useful information. Thank you, Billy.
Sure.
Stephen.
Hi, good afternoon. So my question is, how common is the optional essay? You know, I obviously should explain, you know, unexplained gaps in works or you know, poor academic performance, but I also don't want to be the guy that, you know, doesn't say anything when he should. Do I need to explain choice of recommenders, or how common is it? And should I find a reason to, you know, the answer is probably no with that. But you know, what do you usually see when you come across applications? Thank you.
I'll take that one. So I think you need to reframe it, Stephen. I think a way to frame it is, do you need it? As opposed to how often do we see it, right? So the optional essay is used for a lot of different things. I think a lot of it hinges on whether you perceive there to be anything that can be questionable to the AdCom or anyone who's reading the application. And you hit on a couple of those, right? It could be choice of recommender. For example, some people aren't able to get a recommendation from their current supervisor because it could jeopardize their employment or you know, something like that. We would never want you to do that. So that would be a good reason for an explanation there. Or gaps in work history is another one. Or, you know, some people feel that their grades or test scores aren't necessarily representative of their potential to succeed. I think it's one in which you have to be judicious, right? You need to use your best judgment here. We don't want you to write like a 4-page essay here. People for this optional essay write literal bullet points if necessary, right? It's about being clean and clear and concise and using it if you need it. There isn't anything, you know, short of calling us something rude in the optional statement that's gonna you know, count against you, right? And even then we might not count it against you. So because we read to admit. So use it if you need it. If there is something that you feel is not explained or could cause the admissions committee to pause, address it briefly. Just be clear, be concise, and realize that it's there for a reason. We would never include that to trick you. We would never be like, all right, let's see what this guy puts down. Like, it would never be that kind of instance, right? We want you to use it so that you are giving us a well-rounded application that is representative of all of you even the parts that you don't think are necessarily as strong as other parts.
Thank you.
Sure.
Pete.
Thank you, sir. You said nothing was off limits here, so I'm going to lob one in as someone that hopes to get good news tomorrow at 5 your time. What types of team-based discussion prompts can we expect, or what sort? I don't know if specific examples from the past, or I've struck out when it comes to finding information on Wharton's unique approach to interviewing. So.
Pete, you're really lucky because our subject matter expert on that happens to be on this call.
Sure. So I sometimes joke around that I'm either the admissions committee member that people either love to hate or hate to love. It just kind of depends whether it's the team-based discussion or the wait list. But with the team-based discussion, it's such an incredible exercise. I think the best thing about the team-based discussion is because of its very natural and organic process that takes place. We give you several different deliverables. And for those that aren't familiar, it's a 35-minute exercise that has 3 components. It has a pitch, a discussion, and a final presentation. And in that 35 minutes, you and 5 to 6 other candidates go around, you provide your pitches. And then once everybody completes their pitch, you then work together on a set of objectives and deliverables that need to be delivered to the evaluator with about 5 minutes left on that 35 minutes. And this exercise is, like I said, it gives you a really great opportunity to demonstrate what you do every single day. The benchmark of your success in the military is the mission. It's not someone's particular role or background or how much strength you have or intellect. It's truly working together to complete your mission objectives. And in this exercise, it's the same thing. How can you work well with others and demonstrate those important elements of a team? Because it has similar circumstances to business. The benchmark of your success in business is the client, the shareholder. GMAT, GRE, all of that's not really going to matter. It's going to really be how you work together to deliver those objectives. And the nice thing is, in past prompts, I can share with you past ones that we've used global modular courses as an example, which was a favorite of where would Wharton add new global modular courses. We did some unveiling around Tang Hall, which is our brand new entrepreneurial 8-story building that just opened this past year. What would be some really important elements that would go into that building unveiling? And while I can't share at this moment what the prompt is going to be for this year, the nice thing is it's always Wharton branded. It always has a finite set of deliverables that you can execute in a time, and then does require you to certainly work together towards those deliverables. The big thing is getting active, getting involved, being mindful and courteous of everyone else in the group that they can also have an opportunity to speak, making sure that you're confirming what you heard, bringing in a lot of positive reinforcement to help people really feel valued in this exercise. I do think it actually helps a lot of candidates being in a virtual capacity again this year, because if it was in person, you get a lot more talk over. And since microphones and Zoom really only pick up one person at a time, it helps slow things down a little bit to work through those specific ideas, suggestions, comments, questions, things like that. But yeah, it'll go out pretty quick. And then every year we change the prompt. And the nice thing is we have a microsite, and this microsite, when you are invited to interview, actually walks you through all the elements of the team-based discussion. And one element that we're very proud of this year is we actually put together a 6-minute video that walks you through all those elements that if you don't want to read, you can watch the 6-minute video. And we do give you a couple tips as well.
Thank you. That was immensely helpful.
Sure.
Okay, Richard.
Hey, first, thank you so much for providing this opportunity. I can't tell you how reassuring it is to see the faces behind the decisions and just kind of hear directly from the folks making the decisions. It's really, honestly, it humanizes this process, which is pretty intimidating otherwise. My question relates to the letters of recommendation. So obviously the first one should be an immediate supervisor. How might you approach the second one? Would a past supervisor be more advantageous to potentially a peer who can speak to your ability to work effectively on teams? How would you evaluate those types of options?
I can take this one. So you mentioned, and absolutely, we encourage everyone to ask for a supervisor because we always assume that those are the people that know your work best and can speak to, how you've grown and what you've accomplished. But we also understand that life happens. And so if you can't have a supervisor for your first one and maybe you just got a promotion or your boss doesn't know you're leaving or whatever, thank you, Bill. Yes, please don't use your parents or grandparents or your favorite aunt. We understand that you can ask a previous supervisor or whomever. For your second letter of recommendation, I always say this, and I'll say this for every question I get, you should ask whomever knows you the best. Is that a previous supervisor? Sure. Is that a colleague? Sure. Is that someone who used to report to you and now works alongside you or whatever? It is whomever can speak to the work you've done, the leadership you've shown, how you behave on teams, how you've grown up in your job or moved on or whatever impact it is. I think a lot of people assume that having someone with a really big title of CEO or captain or whatever is going to impress us. And yes, that's always lovely to see, Ralph Lauren write a letter of recommendation. But if Ralph Lauren can't speak to what you do in your job and can't provide us with leadership expertise and talk to who you are as a human, it's not going to do us any good, because these are really glimpses behind the curtain of who you are as a candidate outside of your own mental sphere. So ask whomever knows you best. The other thing I'll give as a tip is when you're asking those people for letters of recommendation, make sure that they have the time and capacity to submit it, and also provide them with as many pieces of information about what you've accomplished, what you're looking to do in your career in your future, maybe what you did in undergrad or how you got where you are. Jeb, yep, exactly. And give them as many tools as they can to empower them to write the best letter of recommendation. And you're going to be in a great spot. Again, it's about who knows you best, not the most impressive title. And if that happens to be both, that's great too. It's more about who knows you best.
Great, thank you so much.
Whoever believes in you, if they believe in you, they'll take the appropriate time to be thoughtful about your letter of recommendation and provide a full context of you as a person, academically, professionally, personally. I think that, one of the, for me, one of the most unfortunate circumstances is when you have an excellent applicant whose letters of recommendation are a little underwhelming in the sense that their writer just hasn't provided enough information to give us requisite context about who they are and their potential contribution. And so, some of this is out of your hands, and you have to have some faith in the process and the output of what other people will do for you. And so that's why it is really important for you to feel good about who you're asking and what they'll be able to provide for you. So, great question. David.
Hi, Dave Poole, and Army Intel Officer at Fort Hood. Thanks everyone for your time, and I apologize if I'm the only one in this boat asking this question. But as a joint JD MBA applicant, I'm curious how the calculus does or doesn't change as you're reviewing applications. So like we just got a glimpse into how, a typical application for just the business school might get viewed. Is it more important for me to try to explain why I think I need both degrees, if only so I don't seem like I'm indecisive and I'm just trying to grab at random degrees? Or should I kind of just look at it just like we've been talking about this entire session?
So I can take that, David. So I worked in law school admissions for about 8 years before coming to Wharton. And so I'm also very fortunate to be able to work closely with Penn Law in my capacity at Wharton, which is really lovely. They're a great team as well. So you need to think about it this way. Effectively, we're going to be looking at, from our side of the fence, are you capable of handling the program at Wharton? And my counterparts in law are going to say, are you capable of handling the law part, right? It is a combined application, so you're heading in the right direction. I think it's really important in the first essay, especially the one about, you're kind of projecting a bit about your career. I do think it is important to underscore why the JD MBA is important, right? Because either degree will have solid outcomes, right? But you're spending arguably, depending on which program you do, more time and definitely more money on these degrees. So we want to make sure that your goals are in line with it, right? We don't, and this is a universal thing with Wharton. We never want to admit someone to Wharton if you can't achieve your goals by coming here, right? It's futile. So I do think that it is a smart idea to think about how in your essay you can articulate, why you're intending to do this joint degree, right? Why does it make sense in terms of your short and long-term goals, right? Why do these schools specifically, why will they allow you to do that? Answering those types of questions, I think, will be valuable. And if anything, and maybe more importantly, it'll help you really solidify and clarify the goals that you have for yourself.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Okay, well, we still have a little bit of real estate with time. So I wanted, and you all have had some fantastic questions, and feel free to ask additional questions, but I wanted to take this moment to get words of wisdom from these seasoned admissions officers who've been reviewing Wharton applicants for a period of time and know the applicant pool well, and know and care about veterans. And maybe I'll start with my piece of advice, and then whoever can just jump in. How about that? So my piece of advice would be for those of you with families to reach out to the Partners Club and Wharton Kids, because I think one of the distinctions of the Wharton community is that it is truly a community that cares, and they want to make sure that you land comfortably, that everybody in your circle lands comfortably. We know that it's not always an individual decision to come to business school. And if you have a partner who needs assistance identifying a job or housing or schools, folks here will help, and they're enthusiastic to help so that you can be your best self in business school.
I'll go. As an adjunct of that as well, use the Vets Club as much as you can. Our Vets Club is one of the most active groups on campus. They are collectively some of the most impressive people I've ever met in my entire life. They're really intentional about paying it forward and really helping former service members understand very clearly and enthusiastically, you have a place here. You have a place in the business world collectively. What you're bringing to the table is unique, and it's something that we value not only from an administrative and academic standpoint at the Wharton School, but from a social perspective. And often when I've spoken with civilian students, they really appreciate and value your perspective in the classroom, and certainly our Vets Club can reiterate that. But as much as you can, obviously we're a good resource. Don't want to downplay the excellence of my teammates. We're all great, but we don't go to Wharton, right? It's really of value to you to leverage that resource as much as possible, because you're only going to encounter an amazing group of people who are looking to help you out.
I can go. I said this earlier, and I will reiterate it again. Do not self-select out. I think so many people assume, and we know what assume does to everyone, assume that they can't get in, assume that they didn't go to the right school, assume that they don't have all the things. Don't do that. Trust who you are, trust your journey. Everyone changes and does things in different patterns, and don't compare yourself to others, because we want to see your application, so don't self-select out. 1. 2, I'm going to go back to saying this, and this is just on the admission side. Yes, and Bill, he just said that don't buy myths on the internet. Please don't read Reddit. Just don't do it. It's just not good for anybody's brain, and most of the things are not true. So just don't do it. I lost my train of thought. Oh, be completely authentic to who you are, and that includes showing us your quirks, showing us your passions. showing us things that might be really unique and that you bring to this community that others don't and that we've never seen. And we talk about our student clubs and how many there are, but you know, they're all many of them have been started because people like you have come with a passion for sailing or boxing or climbing or whatever it is. Talk about that in your applications. What makes you unique? Don't hide your quirks. Don't hide if you love to bake or knit, or I'm naming all the things I love to do. I know, you know, whatever. Talk about that. Be completely authentic to who you are, because again, if you're not authentic to who you are, it's not going to read as a really well-rounded application. And third thing, I lost it, but I think it was probably about Reddit again. I'm going to say it. Don't believe the internet myths. Trust us. Watch our webinars. We're not hiding anything. We don't want to trick you. We are human. As you can see here, we have kids and lives and families, and we want the best for every single person who applies. So come to our events, talk to us in person, talk to our vet schools. Yes, we have amazing app tip webinars on there. Trust what we're saying. Don't rely on anybody else about Wharton who is not Wharton associated.
I'll jump in real quick. So I think there's two things that I'll give as far as like just good general advice. I think one of the great things about vets is they do their homework and they're very thorough in their homework. And I would say do the same thing when you're looking at these different MBA programs. Do your homework. There's going to be elements of essays, and I'll focus on that first, and then I'll shift to letters. There's elements of essays that you can certainly borrow that will be applicable to every MBA program. But candidates that really do a deep dive and learn a little bit more about Wharton, those are the essays that kind of get us to sit up a little bit. They're the ones where it's like we're leaning in and being like, okay, tell us a little bit more here. What's this person really going to do? How are they going to make waves? Not ride waves, but make waves when they get here. And I think some great examples, specifically to our first essay, when we're talking about a lot of career elements, we have over 30 different industry advisors. That's a really unique element of our career management office, so that when you are looking at going into investment banking, you meet with the investment banking advisor. If you're going into entrepreneurship, tech, and so forth. Candidates that really show that they have a good working knowledge of, oh wow, Wharton's industry advising network, and that if I'm going to go into private equity, I need investment banking. I need to look at these post-MBA roles and titles. It really shows that you've gone out there and you've done the homework to really say, this is my path. This is what I'm going to be doing. Here's the reasons why. And it goes a lot further than just saying, I'm going to come to Wharton and major in entrepreneurship. Okay, well, we read that several hundred times. But provide a little bit more context that shows that you've done the homework and you're synthesizing some of these really unique elements of our program and why those unique elements resonate with your preferred either MBA program, learning style, goals, objectives. Synthesize those elements together. It takes good essays and makes them great essays. And then I think the next thing with letters of recommendation, and it was touched on a little bit earlier, really identify who can not write you a letter of recommendation, but an exceptional letter of recommendation. Jeb can probably write the best grammatically correct letter out of all of us on this call as a former English major. Jake has superlative adjectives, but it's not really going to really add any substance and content that talks specifically about your character, your moral compass, with tangible, quantifiable examples. So what do? Just like anything else, before you go into any mission, you're looking at a file. What's the details? What's the background? What's the briefs? What's the objectives? Put all this information into a folder for whoever's writing your letters. In this folder, a physical folder, is your resume, your essay, your cover, not your cover letter, your resume, your essays, your resume, the mission and vision of the school, your entire application, prior performance evaluations, a cover sheet that stresses some of the really important indicators that differentiate Wharton, and provide specific examples or highlight those specific examples. Yes, Jake, to your point, can also be virtual. That's true. I'm a big fan of physical because I'm a little bit older, but at least then you're providing it in a format that's going to be ideal to whoever's writing your letter, so that when they start pulling this information out, they can say, oh, that's right, so-and-so did do this for me 2 years ago on this specific project. Here's the outcomes. And now they're trying to fish and recall all this information. You've put it all in front of them so that they can author that authentic letter that shows that this is an exceptionally handcrafted and thought out letter from that mission, from that project, from whatever is in your application. And that can really help synthesize and tie everything else that you've been conveying into your application. It's how you can take ownership of the letters. It takes a little bit more time, but it also will help you whether it's with us or any other MBA program. But it sets you apart, and that extra time can really pay dividends. And Philadelphia is a great city because then you have Army Navy game, and who doesn't like being there for that right there in your backyard?
It's a great city for some other reasons too, but yeah, Army Navy is great. So everything my colleagues said is amazing. I like going last just because I learn a lot from all the people I sit in the office with. The only thing that I'll add is I think there's a lot of pressure to assign a fit to a school. There's certain words that get used overwhelming when you talk to any admissions officer. Fit is one of those, and I've actually stopped using the word fit because I think it's actually placing the wrong emphasis on the process. It's not your job to figure out what shape you are and how that matches our community. How you would best serve your application goes a lot of what Casey said and what some other people said is, if you identify where it is that you're coming from, what you identify as what's most important to you, how you plan to achieve your goals, and then align share how the Wharton program is aligned to you. That's what fit is for us. It's not creating the shape. It's just sharing where alignment exists with your future and how Wharton can support you in that future. So I didn't want to be redundant, but I think if you think of alignment instead of fit, you're going to put yourself in a better position for a strong application than trying to design what that shape is for you, which you have no control over.
Okay, wise words indeed from the admissions committee. Well, everyone, I just want to offer my gratitude for all of you for sticking with us for a couple hours. Hopefully this program has been helpful and informative and enjoyable. And if you're not already in the Wharton applicant pool, hopefully inspire you to jump on in. We've got some great folks here and some great opportunities.